now we are going to have a talk about how a beginner build an RSS feed provider in Volto by Zimin Yuan. So thank you everyone. Thank you Zimin. Let's get started.
Hi everyone, my name is Simin. I'm currently a master's student at CMU studying computer science. So this summer I had this really incredible opportunity to participate in Google Summer of Code 2024, where I built an RS feed provider in Volto. So before I talk about the technical details of this project, I would like to first thank my mentors, Paul, Nilesh, and Mike, for their invaluable guidance and support while I work on this project this summer. So a little bit about the motivation for this project. So I major in computer science and maths in my undergrad, where I already worked on quite a few full stack web projects using React for frontend and also Next.js or sometimes Fast for backend. But despite that, I was majoring in computer science and never really had a chance to engage with the open source community or like contribute to any open source projects. So when I came across this opportunity to contribute a project with Plone, a really powerful content management system, I figured that it would be a great way for me to really learn about like how components, content management system work, and really how I, as a beginner in the open source community, could engage with the community and contribute to its projects. At this point, you might be wondering then what is RS? Why is it important? So RS is short for really simple syndication. It's a feature that allows websites to publish like regularly updated contents, such as blog entries or news. While at first glance it might sound like a bit outdated, I mean, we live in a world in which algorithms dominate everything, like feeding us ads, recommendations. Then why do we need this RS? But I would say that I believe that it's really essential feature that any content management system should really have because it lets users finally decide what they want for themselves, like what they want to subscribe to, and then what they want to stay updating on every day, not the machine learning algorithm that would assume what we like for ourselves. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the design of the Volto RSS provider. So the key feature of an RSS feed for like a users of the RSS feed is really its ability to use the catalog query to filter content. So if suppose that I have a website in which I want to provide a feed with my users about like all the science articles I have, then one thing I could do is perhaps I can use a query to search for all the contents that contain science, the keyword in its title or perhaps in its keyword, and then provide a RSS feed to users who want to subscribe to that list and stay updated on any science-related articles on my website. Well, similarly, if I want to provide a RSS feed list for my users who want to stay updated on the events I have on my website, I could potentially, hopefully, use a query to filter for all the contents or all the event content types on my website, and then provide user with a curated list of all the events I have on my website. And that are like the use cases of RSS feed that potentially website admin could use for its providers, for its users. So for the RSS feed content type, there are two choices that we potentially had to make while we built this content type. One thing is that we could use a collection behavior. Another option is that we could use a blocks behavior with a listing block, where both of them kind of provide the built-in query abilities that we can make use of to create our RSS feed content type. Um, After some exploration, what we discovered is that whenever we enable the collection behavior, it sort of by default disallowed creating an instance of the content type. And really on top of all of this, like listing block is the new way to go in Volto. So we ended up taking the option two. So a content type with a blocks behavior and a listing block as part of that content type. So in terms of implementation, for the backend, we essentially just create an RSS feed content type that has the blocks behavior enabled and a couple of more metadata or fields like max title length, max description length, in addition to its default fields like description and title. So these two additional fields just allow like users of the RSS feed to specify like up to what length do I want to present my content, so that the RSS feed wouldn't be too long and like unnecessarily long that are really hard to read for its users. So for front end, we created the view component for the content type, which basically just displays like the content or the feed items that was filtered and specified by the query. And the most important part about our implementation is really the Express middleware, which serves all the RSS feed XML files dynamically by intersecting or processing all the requests to the RSS.xml route, and then make use of the route or like the content type to query all the relevant information, and then generate the feed for users who are like making requests to that route. So, well, a couple of components that we wrote for the Express middleware. The first thing is that we would get all the necessary metadata from the RSS feed content type, including its language, title, description, and also the most important query data that user specified in the listing block. And then we would use the query from the RSS feed content type to fetch all the relevant items the user specified that they want to include in the RSS feed list. And then we would make this RSS middleware, which essentially just makes use of the RS package to generate and create a new RS object that includes all the relevant information like title, description, URL, date, authors, and essentially the RSS feed items. So a couple of notes. While we first created the RSS feed middleware for the front end, we first made use of the feed package on the right side, which is like a newer package. But then we discovered that it doesn't really allow for like both creators and image somehow. So we switched to the older package called RS. But a caveat is that both of the packages, which are kind of old, are no longer like actively maintained. So for really outdated syntax, we might have to look into some new packages in the future, but they work so far for the RSS feed RS2 version. So that's kind of the options we have at hand now. And then I'm gonna do a really brief demo about how we can create an RSS feed. So the front-end Volto RSS feed provider package is already published to the npm, and the backend package, our provider is published on PyPy. So suppose that we have installed the front-end and the backend add-ons following the standard procedures that is specified in our training. What we want to do is that we would click on the add button to create our RSS feed content type. And then we will enter the view of this RSS, well, the added page of this RSS feed content type. And we need to at least provide it with a title. And then we need to specify the listing query by clicking on the listing block, and then specify what kind of query we want our RSS feed to have. And then on the left side, we can see that it provides us a preview of all those items that we provided as part of the RSS feed. And then when we click on the save button, everything's all good to go. And the users can see we can see the list of things that are included in the RSS feed. And for users who want to want to subscribe to this RSS feed, they can click on the copy feed link button, and then it will directly automatically copy the RSS feed link to the clipboard. Alternatively, they can also click on the RSS link, which would redirect them to the raw XML file. And then with this file or the link sometimes, they can fit those into a RSS feed parser or readers, which will automatically update them whenever contents are refreshed. And then I'm gonna enter this section, which I'm gonna talk about some of the challenges I encountered. So as someone who's new to the Plone code base, a question I always ask myself every day while I work on the code is that, do I really understand my code? Do I really know what I'm writing? Do I really know why my code works or doesn't work? And oftentimes the answer is not really, unfortunately. So Plone is really built on top of many layers of abstraction, and it has a lot of dependencies, right? It's built on top of Dope and Plone, and then it has the REST API that interacts with the front end, and then it has a new React front end. And like it's really hard for anyone who's new to the code base to really learn everything at once. And what was confusing to me while I work on this project, it's really the ZCML files, like the configuration markup language. I mean, it's really important, right? Like for backend, you always use the local configuration markup language, like define content types, register browser views, specify permissions, and more and more and more. Like it's really crucial to our implementation of the backend. But do I really know like the attributes that are specified here? Like what does the I18N attribute mean? Like does anyone know? Yeah. Right, and then when I look up DCML in our documentation, what I found is that this like introduction in the Plone 5 documentation could tell me that the downsides of DCML is that there's lack of end user documentation. And then in terms of the more info section, what it tells me is that okay, there's a link to the DCML reference, and it then says that it does not really include the Plone specific directives. So as a use case, or like as an example, at some point I tried to configure the RSS feed content type to only have like one title and then one listing block, in which users are not allowed to like delete those two blocks or add new blocks to the content type. And like I end up with this really creative way of doing things, and of course it didn't really work. But as towards why it didn't work, I still didn't really figure it out. And I'm not, and I'm gonna talk about like the correct way to do it like a couple of slides later. But it was like these files are just really confusing to me when I was working on the project. And another thing that I found really challenging to understand is really like the nested folder structure that most of Plone projects have. So when I work on the front-end and back-end add-ons, I was using cookie cutter Plone starter template to create the templates for me, which is already deprecated. But like at the time, I mean, we can see like a really simplified version of the folder structure for the backend. So inside backend, there's like a source folder, and inside that source folder, there's like a RSS provider folder, and inside the RSS provider folder, there's another source folder, which has another RSS provider folder inside it. And while I first push my code, the template code to the backend repository, I of course push the outer source folder. Like it's a source, it's outmost source. But apparently that wasn't really the right way to do it. So after I made a bunch of changes, like in the end, while I was like about to publish the package, like Mike told me that you should really push like the inner source code to like the repository. But really, like it was never really specified. Like how am I supposed to know when I just started working on this project? Um, and then something I also later realized after I published my backend package to PyPy is that a lot of the template folders that are listed here, like browser content indexers, like particular like serializers, whatever, I never really made any changes to them. So I really shouldn't have really included them in my release. But I didn't really know what are the most important folders. But if my code just failed, if I delete some of the folders, but because I didn't really understand the folder structure, it was all really confusing to me, and I had this actual unnecessary folders inside my release. And also, like, we need to be aware that the folder structure that I'm showing you here is really like a simplified version where I delete a lot of files. A true Plone project folder structure probably looks like something on the right side. It's like, if I were to open some source folders, it's going to give a list of files in which I never really fully understood. And the worst thing is that I don't really understand what are the most important files. Like, what are the files that I 100% have to have, and what are the files that if I don't make any changes, I probably really shouldn't worry about. But this is confusing because what if my code fails? And whoops, there are just like millions of possibilities where things might have gone wrong. So as an example, at some point I ran into this error about when I click on, so it happened when I click on the more button of my RSS feed, like view component, and then it told me that, oh, well, like an ID must be provided to format a message. So I thought, okay, it might be like a React, like Intel component thing, and then we were not able to figure it out for like a week or so. And then Nilesh was really smart to then look at the code and figure out that it was because we didn't really specify the layout, view names, mapping, blah, blah, blah. Do I know it? I don't really understand it. And I feel like if I were to work on this project alone, highly unlikely that I'm gonna figure it out because there might be just a million of things that have gone wrong. Perhaps like I wrongly typed something in my backend configuration file that I didn't really understand. Perhaps like I deleted a file in my folder structure that I didn't understand. Perhaps like I wrote some bad code in my React front end that I didn't really, fully understand with all of like the UI components that we provided. So there are just a lot of things that might have gone wrong. And if I only have a partial understanding of each of the components, and when all the components work together to make this website work, I think it's just a bit challenging for anyone who's new to the code base to debug their code because it's just there's no way for me to really see and like look at the code and look at out of the millions of files what might have gone wrong. And then another thing that I found a bit challenging is that what if I want to create something new? So, I mean, the Plone training is kind of a learn by examples thing where, if I were to create a talk content type, it's going to tell me that you should add a new file in types.xml file. And then you need to register the configure the FTI, and then you need to like write the Python file for the schema. Well, this is really good. Like it allows users or like someone who's new to the code base like me to like quickly ramp up about how things actually work in Plone. But there's one issue, is that we really know what each line of the code does. It never really specifies what other options we have. And when we only learn Plone by examples, I'm going to run into a lot of trouble if I want to create something new that's never covered in the examples. And the worst thing is that sometimes the documentation is missing. So at some point of time, when we try to like configure the RSS content type, as I hinted later a few slides earlier on one of my slides, so we want the RSS feed content type to have a title and a listing block in which both of the blocks should be required. So users should not be allowed to like delete any of the block. And also like both of the blocks, so apart from the blocks, users should not be allowed to create any new blocks inside our content type. So I mean, these two features sound really simple, right? We should be able to implement it like really easily. So the thing that like closely matches our expectation in the documentation is like the initial blocks documentation, which tells that you can like specify what blocks you want to include in our content type. And when we look at the example code, we can tell that it has like this required feature. So basically saying like, if it's required, then users should not be allowed to like delete a particular block. So we finished the first half of our puzzle. We can probably just use the initial blocks to tell like Plone that we want like a title and a listing block in our content type, and both of these should be required, so users should not be allowed to delete them. But what about the component in which we want to make both of the like prevent users from deleting or like adding new blocks in the content type? So after some exploration, Dinesh told me that if we were to look at like some of the content types in the like Plone inspection thing, or in the Chrome inspection thing, we can see that it has this feature called disable new blocks. So okay, if we have this feature that might be working, but like how can we add this attribute or set it to true for our content type? So at some point, I tried to configure it using the FTI, like in the XML file I just showed to you like a couple of slides before, and it completely failed. And we were like not sure how we could proceed. So I posted like a post in the community channel about what I'm trying to achieve and where I need help on. And then a few days later, Fred was really kind to tell us that we can actually just configure it inside the initial blocks configuration by setting the disable new blocks to true. And Fred also pointing us to the source code, with all those nested folder structure about schema.js, that it has this feature, this attribute called disable new blocks. And then after like a week or two, we finally settled on these two lines of code in which we need to really just set required to true and disable new blocks to true. But really, like it should have been a lot easier if something was just mentioned in the documentation about initial blocks, or like included in the example to let us know that it's actually something that we could do, and it's actually something that could be configured here. So lessons learned. What if I could travel back in time to when I first started the project in May? I think I would greatly appreciate if someone could kind of give me an overview of the code base, like how different components are connected, how are different folders really connected, and how do all of those files work together to make this whole thing work. And I think I would also greatly appreciate like if there could be having a guide on how we could approach like the source code, like what are the files that I should really look into if I have some confusion, like if I'm confused about like a front end feature, really like where should I look for that source code. And I would 100% appreciate if everyone could like document the code a little bit more, both in the docs and really like in the source code themselves, so that like for people to look into the source code, it will be easier for them to like navigate the source code and know how things were working, were connected together. And then some advice for developers who are new to Plone or for future GSOC participants. I think source code is really our friend. And also like the Plone community is really helpful, like always ask questions and be specific with what you have tried and what you want to achieve. And really, last emphasis here, like documentation, please. Like for anyone who's writing their code, as a new developers or experienced developers, I think everyone might probably benefit a bit more if like we have more comments or like more documentation both in the docs and in the source code, and it will just make it easier for us to understand the already complicated structure of the Plone systems. And again, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Zimi. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for being here and for really giving a lot of people in this room and outside this room stuff to think about and homework. It was really, I'm a bit biased because, yeah, I was one of your mentors, but you delivered not only a really workable product that simply works, it gives you an RSS feed, but also these insights are actually really good for us to see like, okay, how do newcomers view our documentation, get to work with it. It was, I think you contribute with those insights just as much as you do with the code. The code is also really welcome because I love RSS feeds. So I would just wanted to say thank you very, very much.
Thank you to you.
Thanks a lot for one of the nicest rants I ever saw. What Paul says, I can just like second that. That's incredibly helpful. It gives us lots to think about. So thanks a lot. I have a question. Are you going to stay for the sprint tomorrow?
If I could be of any help for the spring,
Absolutely.
I could still.
That
Cool.
would be fantastic. I think we can like sit together with you and go through. I mean, you prepared everything, the agenda basically for us, like our homework to go through that, right, and see what we can do about it. I mean, we won't be able. Let's be honest. We won't be able to solve everything because it's just old code, right? And we're thankful that you're pointing that out here, and we're all aware of that. But your perspective is really, really helpful for us because we have been in this community for way too long. So we don't see those things as clearly as you see them, and that's something that we could take advantage of as a community. And it would be great if you would have time on Saturday to sit with us and see what we can do about it. Thank you.
So hi, I'm Fred.
Oh, hi, Fred.
So I want to talk. This is a hilarious story, and Paul will now know what I mean, because so for everybody else in the room, I mean, this is open source, and this is community, and this is like talking with each other and complete coincidence. So Paul has been mentoring her very, very well, and for some totally other project, I happened to be in the office at Paul in Amsterdam to help them with their site that afternoon when they were also doing the weekly mentoring. And Paul was like, yeah, you can come, but I've got this other meeting. I was like, yeah, sure, do your thing. And then I was sitting there, yeah, it's Google Summer of Code. And I was like, yeah, sure, of course you could do Summer. I'll manage, I'll get that content database and I'll copy some stuff. And we were fiddling around with USB sticks that didn't work. And I'm sitting there next to Paul. Yeah, blocks restricting things. Wait a minute. Discord channel, what's the problem? Aha, okay. Because coincidentally, I had especially this blocks problem a while ago in a project. I first used a solution that was for templating and things, which Aline there and his colleagues had been building for the EEA portal. No, I have nothing to do with it. Yes, you do. And it didn't work. So I kind of half communicated again with my colleague, Victor. Victor said, did they add that in core? I never used that. You have initial blocks. So only 2 weeks ago, before that, I learned about initial blocks from him because they had also attempted that thing. I happened to be in the office with Paul and eavesdropping on her question. So, moral of the story? Talk more. Talk even more and talk until your ears fall off.
Follow-up question for you, Fred, and I mean this in the friendliest of ways, but why didn't you file a documentation issue? We should write that down.
We have documented this, in your talk, but also we still have the Google Docs that we worked on, and we will expand this into a learning experience for all of you.
Let let me say something. First of all, I am to blame. I am the one to blame for that documentation. But I have a but. I think that what happened here, and I haven't checked the code or anything, is that we had something in place that is used by the dexterity layout. I don't remember the name, how we call it, the dexterity thingy. And we have the initial blocks. And I think that that it's a side effect that the disable and the require works because it's in the machinery when the add and edit form works. It was already in there. So if you fit the initial blocks with that data as well, it works, right? So it's kind of a side effect, which we didn't expect it when I wrote that documentation. And I'm not trying to explain myself, to excuse myself of everything, but I think that this is what happened.
What I can do now is hand over the microphone to my colleague Maurits, because I think he spent 6 hours on figuring out why the other solution didn't work. Yeah. Yeah. Maurits? No, probably not right now. Too technical, but ask him.
Again, I'm really sorry. We should ask questions of you. But also, I will take this opportunity to say that one of the most productive parts also of this mentoring project was that we had 3 mentors. Nilesh, who is quite technical and very brilliant. Me, who knows nothing, but is a good product manager because I know what I want from, like, what do I want the product to achieve. And Mike, who does a bit of both. He has both a user perspective and a programming perspective. And having 3 mentors also meant a luxury that if one of us had to go to a conference or was ill, that we could still hold our regular meetings. So I would ask all of the community to consider becoming a mentor. The more mentors you have, the less the individual mentors have to do, and it's really super nice to enjoy with nice people like this. So for the next iteration of GSOC, consider yourself yeah, please consider becoming a mentor. It's fun. It helps the community. It helps students. It helps yourself to take a step back and learn what the student thinks of our code base and our community. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Zimin, for the talk. It was really a nice talk. And yeah, so I would like to for the disable new blocks feature. I think we had so issues in the for example, when we were kind of designing the project, then we thought that okay, let's not use the blocks layout at all. So we also discussed it with Fred, and but we want the listing block to work. That's why we enable the blocks behavior on that content type. Otherwise, we don't need it to use the new blocks per type. So that settings. So that's why we decided to enable. We have to enable the blocks behavior. Otherwise, we can just create the query string widget on the content type and then just show in the view, modify the RSS feed view. So yeah, but yeah, I mean it was good, and also thanks Fred for jumping into the discussion in the channel that he also pointed out. Okay, yeah, you don't need to use the blocks behavior. You can just add the query widget on the content type, and then you can just, because we only need the query to the catalog and yeah, so it was a really nice thing, and so people who are also around, so they can jump and they can help us. So that's also a nice thing about the Plone community. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Jimmy, thank you. That was a lot of fun to hear all the struggles you went through. And just to reinforce what you were asking, would your participation in the sprints be valuable? It absolutely is, because I think, as has been said, your perspective as a newcomer is really important to us, because without it, we would not know these kinds of problems, and we would not have the opportunity to fix them. And it's also a great way for us to get to know you, and for you to meet some of the people in this room who have done, who are responsible for some of the problems you ran into.
So anyone have any more questions? No? So okay, thank you very much, Zimi. Thank you, everyone. Another round of applause, please.